Welcome to Max Premieres. 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most intense years in recent cinema. 25 films ranging from absurd comedies to sci-fi epics, pure horror, spy thrillers, and comebacks nobody expected this soon. There's something for everyone. Massive franchise returns that have been years in the making, independent surprises that could catch you off guard, and international productions well worth discovering. But before we get started, it would mean a lot if you took a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for the support. Number 25, Coyote vs. ACME. Wile E. Coyote has spent decades buying ACME products that fail in the most catastrophic ways possible. Every trap, every rocket, every contraption blows up in his face while the Roadrunner escapes without a scratch. But this time, Coyote has had enough. He's taking ACME to court, suing the company for repeated negligence and defective merchandise. What follows is an epic and absurd trial that blends animation with live action, turning one of the longest-running characters in cartoon history into the unlikely hero of an unexpectedly heartfelt legal battle. Coyote vs. ACME was born under complicated circumstances. The original studio completed the film and then shelved it as a tax write-off, igniting a wave of public outrage that ultimately forced its rescue and release. The result is a hybrid comedy with cult classic potential. Will Forte and John Cena lead the live-action cast, and the emotional undercurrent of the story gives it more weight than the premise suggests. The humor is sharp, the nostalgia is well used, and how the execution lands is something audiences will have to judge for themselves. Expectations are high. Number 24, Runner. A high-end courier receives the most urgent job of his career: transport a liver from Brisbane to the Gold Coast in just 3 hours. On the other end, there's a life that depends entirely on that organ arriving on time and in perfect condition. What looks like a tough delivery turns into a race against the clock, bad luck, and a chain of obstacles no one could have predicted. Every minute lost has real consequences, and the courier has to make increasingly difficult decisions as the city keeps getting in the way. Runner is Australian action filmmaking on a tight budget, but with a premise that doesn't let up from the opening minute. The Brisbane geography and the highway between cities serves as a genuine high-stakes setting, and the simplicity of the concept is its biggest strength. Films built around a single objective and a countdown depend almost entirely on the energy and believability of the lead. As a smaller production with cast details still limited, the real test will come at release whether the execution delivers on what the premise promises. Number 23, Super Troopers 3. Farva's over-the-top Indian engagement is falling apart before it even starts. The bride, the in-laws, the traditional customs, and the Super Troopers inserting themselves where nobody asked for them add up to an absolute disaster of a situation. While Thorny does everything in his power to torpedo the relationship and save his sister from what he considers the worst mistake of her life, the whole crew tries to keep up appearances and stumbles into an entirely new drug ring that nobody invited. Super Troopers 3 brings back the full original Broken Lizard ensemble with the same absurdist cop comedy energy that built them an exceptionally loyal fan base. Peter Farrelly steps in as director for the third chapter, and the tone promises to stay completely true to the previous films. The wedding chaos premise has enough material to sustain the whole movie. This is the kind of comedy that asks nothing from the audience except a willingness to laugh without over-analyzing anything. Disney distributes through Searchlight, giving it real institutional backing. Number 22, The Punisher, One Last Kill. Frank Castle tried. He really tried to live without revenge, without weapons, without the endless weight of being the Punisher. But there are people in this world who won't leave dangerous men alone, and a new threat arrives with enough force to drag him back into the war. This time, before he can close anything for good, Castle will have to face unresolved battles from a past he never wanted to revisit, battles that made him everything he is. The Punisher, One Last Kill brings back one of Marvel's darkest and most morally complex characters outside the official Marvel Cinematic Universe, with the promise of a roar story free from the filters of previous adaptations. Cast details remain under strict embargo, but the premise aims straight at the heart of the character, a man who can no longer clearly tell whether he's pursuing justice or simply can no longer stop. The dramatic arc has real potential. Whether the execution finally does justice to what this character deserves is something audiences will have to weigh in on at release. Number 21. CLAYFACE. Matt Hagen is an actor in freefall. His career is collapsing, his debts are mounting, and his desperation has no bottom. When a gangster disfigures his face, panic drives him to look for any solution that exists. A scientific experiment that promised to be the answer changes everything in ways no one could have anticipated. His body begins to transform, to mutate, to lose the shape it has always had. CLAYFACE is the story of a man who loses control of his identity literally and becomes a monster without ever entirely wanting to be one. James Watkins directs from a script by horror master Mike Flanagan, making this one of the most intriguing bets in the DC Universe's early years. Flanagan has been a defining voice in contemporary horror for years, and here his vision seeps into the dark superhero mythology with real creative freedom. Tom Rhys-Harries leads the film. An October release gives it the perfect context: body horror in Halloween season, inside DC Studios' expanding cinematic universe. This one arrives loaded with anticipation. Number 20. Street Fighter. Ryu and Ken have been apart for years, each following their own path without contact. When Agent Chun-Li recruits them to compete in the World Warrior Tournament, what looks like an international martial arts competition turns out to be a front for something far darker and more dangerous. A conspiracy emerges from beneath the tournament's surface, and the two historic rivals will have to set their differences aside to survive what's waiting for them and protect innocent lives. Street Fighter has spent decades waiting for a film adaptation that actually honors the legacy of the most iconic fighting video game franchise in history. The promise of this version is to take its characters and universe seriously while delivering the action, energy, and visual spectacle that fans have been demanding on screen without success. The main characters appear in early footage with their full visual identities intact and immediately recognizable to anyone who grew up with the game. The premise is solid and the concept is promising, but the franchise's troubled history with previous adaptations demands caution before celebrating. Execution will have the final word. Number 19. The Dog Stars. The world broke. A devastating virus wiped out nearly all of civilization, and Hig, one of the few survivors, has spent years living in a contained zone in Colorado alongside Bangley, his ex-Marine neighbor who guards the perimeter with an iron hand. What keeps them alive is routine, discipline, and mutual distrust. But Hig picks up a radio signal coming from far away, and the hope that something better exists out there turns out to be stronger than fear. The Dog Stars is Ridley Scott returning to the science fiction that made him legendary. Devastated worlds, characters pushed to their limit, and deep questions about what remains of humanity when everything else collapses. Jacob Elordi leads the cast alongside Josh Brolin, Margaret Qualley, and Guy Pearce. The script comes from Mark L. Smith, the same writer behind The Revenant, based on Peter Heller's acclaimed novel. The combination of director, cast, and source material positions this as one of the year's most ambitious films. The execution is what audiences will be watching for. Number 18. Passenger. A few weeks into a van life adventure on open roads, a young couple with no fixed destination and no rush, living the freedom of the highway. Everything breaks when they witness a traffic accident that leaves a driver dead on the side of the road. They drive away. They keep going. But something followed them from the crash site, a nameless demonic presence with no intention of letting them go. Passenger is road horror with a premise that reads simply on paper and grows into something far more disturbing as it unfolds. Andre Overdahl brings solid genre experience and knows how to build tension in confined, inescapable spaces. His previous work includes Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Jacob Scipio and Lou Lobel lead a film backed by the producers of the It and Conjuring franchises. The everyday texture of van life amplifies the horror effectively. Whether the full development justifies its setup is what audiences will be paying to find out. Number 17. Practical Magic 2. The Owen sisters have carried the same curse for centuries. Love destroys them. Sally and Gillian manage to find something close to peace, but the shadows of their family's past and the secrets of their ancestors threaten to undo everything they built. To finally break the spell for good, they'll have to face truths they'd rather not remember, and make sacrifices neither of them would choose under any other circumstances. Practical Magic 2 reunites Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock more than 25 years after the first film, with Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest also returning as the aunts. Suzanne Bier directs the sequel based on Alice Hoffman's novel The Book of Magic. Joey King, Maisie Williams, Lee Pace, and Zolo Maridueña join the cast as new characters. The return of such a beloved ensemble with fresh literary source material has all the potential to be one of the year's most celebrated moments for a certain audience. Nostalgia is a powerful tool when it's well wielded. The question is whether the story has enough strength on its own terms beyond the reunion. Number 16. FAULER-IN-LAW. Henry Fokker is in love and wants to get married. The problem is that nobody in his family likes the woman he chose, starting with his father Greg, who already has his hands full surviving his father-in-law Jack Burns. The arrival of Henry's fiancée and all the tension of the announcement set off a chain of misunderstandings, confrontations, and revelations that transform a piece of happy news into a family war of epic and completely predictable proportions. FAULER-IN-LAW is the fourth entry in the franchise that began with Meet the Parents, reuniting Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller after years away. Ariana Grande joins the cast in one of her most substantial acting roles to date, alongside Skylar Gisondo as the son. Owen Wilson also returns. John Hamburg, who directed the previous entries, comes back behind the camera with the same approach as always. Generational and family conflict humor remains the franchise's formula, and the new cast members bring fresh material to work with. Whether the chemistry still holds is the key question. Number 15. Godzilla -0. 2 years after Godzilla tore through post-war Japan and left devastation in its wake, the world is still struggling to rebuild. The wounds are deep, the trauma is real, and the Shikishima family continues to carry the emotional weight of everything they survived. When a new threat begins to emerge from the depths of the ocean, the story they thought was over comes back with even greater intensity. Godzilla -0 picks up directly where Godzilla -1 left off the Japanese monster film that became a completely unexpected global phenomenon, won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and reminded the whole world why kaiju cinema can also be genuinely moving drama. Takashi Yamazaki returns to direct this IMAX-scale sequel, with actors Ryunosuke Kamiki and Minami Hamabe confirmed to reprise the roles audiences followed with such genuine affection. The combination of intimate human drama and monumental destruction that made the first film great returns with an even more ambitious production. The expectations are enormous. Number 14. Couples Weekend. 4 adults and couples gather to ring in the new year away from the city, looking for a little time together without any pressure. The mood starts festive until a traffic accident in the middle of the night sets off a chain of revelations nobody wanted to surface. Carefully maintained lies, hidden desires, and broken loyalties emerge one after another, and what should have been a quiet celebration turns into a ruthless emotional autopsy of every relationship in the room. Couples Weekend is relationship drama with thriller tension, released direct-to-VOD for the English language market. The premise works especially well in an intimate format, a small cast, confined space, truths that can no longer be ignored by anyone. The kind of film that can genuinely surprise when the script is built with real honesty and the actors have the depth to sustain it for the full runtime. As an independent production, cast information is still limited, but the concept has the potential to generate genuine interest among audiences who appreciate character-driven drama. Number 13. No Ordinary Heist. In 2004, the Northern Bank of Ireland suffered the biggest robbery in its history. Over £20 million vanished in a single night. 2 bank employees who had been at odds with each other for years were forced by criminals who kidnapped their families to become unwilling accomplices in the most audacious heist the country had ever seen. What follows is a race between fear, mutual distrust, and the urgent need to save their loved ones before time runs out and everything collapses. No Ordinary Heist takes a well-documented real event and turns it into a crime thriller with genuine domestic tension. These aren't professional criminals. They're ordinary people with everything to lose and no experience or skills for navigating organized crime. The historical basis adds real weight to a story that might otherwise be just another heist thriller. Cast details are still limited, but the premise has enough genuine potential to generate real interest among fans of the genre. Number 12. In the Gray. An elite team of operatives works in the deepest shadows of global power. Their mission: recover a billion-dollar fortune stolen by a ruthless despot who answers to no one. What starts as an impossible heist spirals into a web of betrayal, strategy, and survival where a single mistake can cost everyone their lives. In The Gray is Guy Ritchie in full classic mode, sharp humor, stylized shootouts, and the kind of lead chemistry that holds the whole film together from the opening scene. Henry Cavill and Jake Gyllenhaal form a duo with palpable energy from the first trailer, and Eiza Gonzalez completes the trio as the handler keeping them alive. Christopher, Hee-View, and Rosamund Pike add genuine weight to the supporting cast. Ritchie built his career on exactly this kind of material and returns to it here with total confidence and no filters. The film arrived in theaters after some delay from its original date, building up accumulated anticipation along the way. If the execution matches the premise, this could be one of the year's best surprises. Number 11. Balls Up. Brad and Elijah are marketing executives with an idea they think is brilliant, and most of the world doesn't, making a full-coverage condom the official sponsor of the World Cup. The launch in Brazil starts out fine. What comes next does not. A completely out-of-control drunken celebration turns them into the most hated men in the world's most soccer-obsessed country, chased by furious fans, criminals, and officials willing to do anything to make them pay. Balls Up is the kind of comedy that makes no claims to Oscar glory and knows it from minute one. Mark Wahlberg and Paul Walter Hauser form a surprisingly effective pair for material this ridiculous, and the film is directed by Peter Farrelly, the same filmmaker behind Green Book. Critical reception was pretty cold, and the humor leans too heavily on repetitive physical gags to fully sustain itself. On the upside, it has genuinely funny moments and a pace that never bores across its nearly 2-hour runtime. This is exactly the kind of film made for a no-expectations Friday night on the couch. Number 10. Spider-Man: Brand New Day. Peter Parker lives completely alone. 4 years after Doctor Strange's spell erased his name from everyone's memory, Peter is still a full-time Spider-Man in a New York that has no idea who he is. No family, no friends, no shared history with anyone. Just the city and the infinite weight of responsibility. When a new threat emerges from the shadows and something begins to change in him physically in ways he doesn't understand, Parker will face his darkest and most isolated challenge yet. Spider-Man: Brand New Day is Tom Holland's fourth film as Peter Parker, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, the filmmaker behind Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. The return of Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, and John Bernthal as Frank Castle gives the arc genuine emotional continuity. Mark Ruffalo also appears as Bruce Banner. The total isolation premise gives this film a dramatic potential the previous entries didn't have. It's Marvel's biggest cinematic bet for the summer of 2026. Number 9. Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan: Ghost War. Jack Ryan is pulled out of retirement to hunt down a ghost unit of special operations, soldiers operating entirely beyond any official control or established chain of command. What starts as an apparently routine intelligence mission gradually reveals secrets buried for decades that threaten to spark a global conflict if they leak at the wrong moment. Ryan has to move fast, identify the right people to trust, and not make a single mistake because there will be no second chance to fix anything. Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. Ghost War extends the universe of the iconic character into the theatrical film format, beyond the successful streaming series that reinvented the franchise for a new generation of viewers. The film promises the same level of geopolitical tension and tactical action that made the franchise popular across decades of novels, films, and television. Specific cast and distribution details remain completely under wraps, but the Tom Clancy brand has enough inherent weight to generate a natural audience within the modern international spy thriller genre. The premise is solid on paper. Number 8. Infiltrate. Lily Chen is a government agent with an ordered life and a visible career on the rise. Everything changes when her husband vanishes without a trace, and an anonymous voice lays out the exact terms for seeing him again. Infiltrate organized crime and eliminate high-level targets one by one, with no margin for mistakes and no room to negotiate different terms. Just comply. Infiltrate is straight-to-the-point action, released directly on VOD platforms without a theatrical run. The film was directed by James Mark, a filmmaker specializing in Canadian independent action cinema with titles like Kill Order and Enhanced in his filmography. Orphée La Douceur Nguyen carries the film with genuine physical energy that's especially convincing in the combat sequences, while Alain Moussi appears as the lead villain with enough intensity for the role. It's exactly the kind of project that doesn't pretend to be more than what it is. Well-choreographed action, fast-paced, with no time wasted on narrative ambitions the film doesn't have. For those who enjoy the action genre without filters or pretensions, this can be a pleasant surprise. Number 7. An Enemy Within. On his wedding day, Caleb Wingate receives a visitor who is not on any program. A killer known as the Wolf puts an impossible choice on the table. Decide who lives and who dies among the people you love. What should have been the best day of his life becomes a deadly puzzle where Caleb has to think faster than his enemy to protect everyone who matters to him. An Enemy Within is an independent action thriller released directly on VOD. The premise works as a starting point for a survival story with a countdown in full motion, and the wedding setting provides an effective dramatic contrast between the romantic surroundings and the brutality of the situation. This kind of closed-space thriller with an impossible decision depends almost entirely on pacing, accumulated tension, and the believability of the protagonist under extreme pressure. Production and cast information is limited, but the premise has the kind of functional tension that can hold up well in execution. Number 6. Mutiny. Cole Reed witnessed the murder of his billionaire boss, and instead of becoming the witness justice needed, he became the prime suspect overnight. Now he's running, searching for the evidence that clears his name while uncovering a conspiracy that goes far deeper than anything he could have imagined from the outside. Every person he trusts could be part of the problem, and the margin for error is zero. Mutiny is a chase thriller with a protagonist running against the clock to clear his name before the real culprits find him first. The film opened in UK and European cinemas in August with Studio Canal distribution, a real sign of industrial backing. The genre of the wrongly accused man on the run has a long, well-established tradition in English-language action cinema. Success depends almost entirely on pacing, tension built scene by scene, and the believability of the lead when the walls are closing in. Cast details are limited, but this is a project with real distribution behind it. Number 5. Outcome. A Hollywood star has a serious problem. There's a video that shouldn't exist. Footage from his past that, if it goes public, will destroy everything he spent years carefully building and maintaining. The pressure grows every day, time is running out, and the actor has to make decisions that will reveal who he really is when the cameras are off and there's no public image left to project. Outcome is a drama about public and private redemption, arriving with careful production values and genuine script attention. The premise of fame as a trap that eventually closes on those who chase it remains fertile ground for stories with real emotional weight. As a smaller profile project with a quiet release, cast information is still limited, but the concept carries the kind of moral ambiguity that can sustain a full story when the script is well built and the performances have the depth to carry it. The portrait of someone living with a secret capable of unraveling everything they have built has the potential to be genuinely unsettling and honest in equal measure. Number 4. Desert Warrior. Hanzala is an honorable warrior living in the desert by his own code of conduct, one he won't negotiate under any pressure or circumstance. When he decides to help a fugitive king and a princess fleeing the powerful Emperor Kisra, he becomes a declared enemy of the most dangerous empire in the region without ever having sought that confrontation. Pursued across the sands by far superior forces, he must fight for his own survival without betraying the principles that define him as a man and a warrior. Desert Warrior is international epic adventure filmmaking set in the ancient Arab world. The visual scale promises desert landscapes that fully justify the big screen, and the story of honor confronting absolute power is an archetype that works well when executed with real conviction and no concessions to empty spectacle. The studio has backed the project with genuine production resources, and the available footage suggests considerable visual care. Cast details remain under wraps, but the project has confirmed distribution and a direct, clear premise. Number 3. The Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. 24 years before Katniss Everdeen took her place in the arena, Panem held the 50th Hunger Games, the second quarter quell, the most brutal in the capital's history. The rule that year was simple and merciless: twice the tributes, twice the deaths. Haymitch Abernathy, a young man from District 12, is selected and sent to compete in the deadliest arena the capital has ever built. What he lives through will mark him forever and explain the distant, alcoholic man audiences know from the original saga. The Hunger Games. Sunrise on the Reaping boasts an exceptional cast: Joseph Zada, Jesse Plemons, Ralph Fiennes as President Snow, Glenn Close, Elle Fanning as a young Effie Trinket, and Kieran Culkin as Caesar Flickerman. Francis Lawrence, director of Catching Fire and both Mockingjay films, returns to helm the project with a screenplay by Billy Ray. Suzanne Collins' novel sold over 1.5 million copies in its first week. The dramatic potential and production scale make this one of the year's most anticipated releases. Number 2. Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu. The Empire fell, but its remnants remain scattered across the galaxy, sowing danger wherever they land. The New Republic needs someone they can trust to face those threats, and the best candidate is Din Djarin, the Mandalorian bounty hunter who has formed an inseparable clan with his apprentice Grogu. Together they take on a new mission: rescue a prisoner from the Hutts in exchange for information vital to the galaxy's security. Star Wars. The Mandalorian and Grogu is the first Star Wars theatrical film since 2019, and it arrives carrying the full weight of a franchise that can't afford to stumble. Jon Favreau directs and co-writes alongside Dave Filoni, the two architects of the original series. Pedro Pascal leads the cast, with Sigourney Weaver as the film's most notable new addition, alongside Jeremy Allen White. Ludwig Göransson returns to score the film with the unmistakable signature of the series. The anticipation is enormous, the affection for these characters is intact, and the release positions this as the Star Wars event fans have been waiting years to see. Number 1. Dune, Part 3. 12 years have passed since Paul Atreides seized control of Arrakis and proclaimed himself Muad'Dib. The universe bent to his will, but the price was a holy war that spread across entire galaxies and left millions dead in the name of his vision. Now Paul rules from the top, knowing with certainty that the same forces that elevated him are actively conspiring to tear him down. His prescient visions are clouded by powers he doesn't fully understand, and the decisions he makes in the days ahead could reshape the fate of humanity in irreversible ways. Dune, Part 3 closes Denis Villeneuve's trilogy with the most politically complex and ambitious material in the entire saga. Frank Herbert's Dune Messiah is a radical inversion of the classic hero. The protagonist is no longer the chosen one fighting for the throne, he's the tyrant the universe wants to overthrow. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Florence Pugh, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Jason Momoa all return. Robert Pattinson joins as the villain Scytale. A December 18th release positions this as the defining cinematic event to close out 2026. And that's our run through the 25 films set to define 2026. From the reunion of the Owen sisters to the epic close of Villeneuve's trilogy, there's something here for every kind of moviegoer. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Until next time, take care.